Lenovo has been pretty relentless this year so far. From low to mid and even high-end phones, they pretty much cover the gamut. For its latest smartphone, they're refocusing on the entry-level side of the market once again with the low-priced Moto G4 Play. It's $150 outright, so it means getting a phone on the cheap. But then it makes us wonder if there are any significant compromises. Now, am I really surprised about the build quality for this? Not really, because for the money and price at all, it's expected. It's not premium, it's not trying to be premium, but for an entry-level phone, it's okay, I guess. It's not really terribly cheap, but at the same time, it's not stylish either. So yeah, it might have a dull profile when you compare it to some other phones of the same caliber, but it surprisingly receives the same water-repellent treatment that we pretty much find in the Moto family line, meaning minor splashes and light rain won't damage it, which is basically the extent of its water resistance protection. Part of the reason why it's more hand-friendly than the G4 and G4 Plus is because it comes with a smaller 5-inch 720p IPS LCD display. Now, the resolution is predictable, but we've seen other comparable phones that have 1080p resolution. It's not a deal breaker, considering that it's still detailed enough to make out from a normal viewing distance. Now, despite that, there are more unfavorable qualities with it, like its cold color temperature of 8600 Kelvin, the inaccuracies with its color reproduction, and visible distortion at wide angles. They all point to a subpar display. Now, the only highlight is its peak luminance of 545 nits, which makes it visible on most sunny days. The processor here reflects its price. What we have is a quad-core 1.2 GHz Qualcomm Snapdragon 410 processor coupled with 2 GB of RAM and the Adreno 306 GPU. They all indicate an entry-level phone here, but when it comes to basic stuff, it at least suffices with its performance. It just doesn't cut it with games. In fact, it's just a choppy mess. Phones of this caliber usually don't have much in the way of storage. However, we're glad to report that the Moto G4 Play comes with 16 GB of internal capacity with expansion via microSD support. Of late, we've been seeing more phones in this price range with fingerprint sensors. For the Moto G4 Play though, that's not something that's included in its arsenal. Nor were we expecting one either, especially when it's priced less than the G4. To be fair, the handset's intention is to be just a basic phone. So yeah, the features are as light as they can be in a smartphone, which makes perfect sense. It's usable for the most part for watching videos, despite the poor qualities about the display that we mentioned earlier. Interestingly enough though, the earpiece also doubles as the handset speaker. Volume isn't an issue here, but you'll want to drop the level a few notches down so that the sharpness isn't too irritating to the ear. Given its overall size, the removable 2800 mAh battery seems like a pretty good capacity. And when you combine that with its smaller screen size, the 720p resolution, and the battery-optimized chipset, it definitely delivers good results with its battery life. It's more than adequate to get through a solid day of normal usage. And while I really enjoy the battery life on the smartphone, the charging time is kind of ridiculous, kind of long too. So you're gonna have to leave it on the charger for a little bit of time, so you might want to make sure you only do that when you're going to bed. Much as it's the case with most entry-level things, there's really not a huge focus with the camera here. It's a meager 8 megapixel rear camera with an f2.2 aperture lens and an LED flash, while a 5 megapixel snapper rounds out the front-facing camera. It features nearly the same exact camera interface as other Moto devices, save for the fact that you can't twist the phone a couple times to launch the camera, but pressing the power button twice in succession does the same thing. As for the quality, well, it's predictable in the way that we can't expect outstanding results with low-priced phones. When the conditions are ideal, its performance is good enough for sharing on social media. Above all though, you'll want to keep a steady hand because its snapshot time isn't as quick as we'd like, so photos are prone to blurring. Fine details are lacking any significant substance, often making them appear speckled. And forget about low light situations, seeing that it exhibits too much noise. Likewise, we can say the same thing about its video recording performance at 1080p. Most of the time, however, it struggles to focus properly, which gets annoying after a while. And to top it off, there's also some artifacting present when shooting under sunny conditions. On the surface, the Moto G4 Play doesn't stray too far with its Android 6.0.1 Marshmallow experience,
but certainly doesn't have all the same features we get in some other devices in the line.
And that's the thing about the experiences on these Moto devices, whether it be the high-end, low-end, mid-ranger, they pretty much go with the same unified approach. They're not trying to inundate you with a lot of software stuff. It's pretty much straightforward for the most part. And of course, being an entry-level phone, it does the basic stuff.
Voices through the earpiece exhibit enough volume under noisy conditions, but the quality is accompanied with some sharpness that makes voices sound a little bit distorted. On the other end of the line, our callers don't have any major objections about the performance, with the exception of some light white noise in the background. The Moto G4 plays undeniably on one end of the spectrum, offering consumers a phone that won't break the bank. At first glance, the $150 full price of the phone is an attractive thing. But the more we think about what we've seen in the last few months, it definitely makes us believe that it has some stiff competition. Yes, it does nicely for those who aren't looking for anything more than doing the most bare-bone things with their phone. But when you have other phones that have a smidgen better specs and even fingerprint sensors, it makes it seem like it's undervalued for the price. We're not saying that it's a terrible phone, but rather the competition has raised the bar from what's expected in phones of this caliber. And that is the Moto G4 Play. So if you guys want to learn more about this smartphone, you can check out our website, androidauthority.com. This is John V signing off.